Welcome to my channel, where the shadows speak and the tales chill the bone. I'm your host, and each week, we dive into the depths of the most spine-tingling horror stories that will leave you questioning the silence of the night. Today, we embark on another terrifying journey with a story that's sure to haunt your dreams. Remember to hit that like button if the video sends a shiver down your spine, leave a comment below to share your thoughts or fears, and don't forget to subscribe to ensure you never miss out on the next dose of dread. Let's keep the thrill alive together. Now, sit back, dim the lights, and prepare for a frightful experience. Mia and Jake reached the boathouse. The wooden floorboards creaked ominously under their weight. Inside, an old canoe sat overturned, and a rusted oar lay on the ground. Jake picked up the oar, joking, "In case we need to fend off any ghosts." Mia forced a laugh, her eyes darting nervously around the dim space. Sarah and Liam stumbled upon a cabin with a peculiar symbol carved into the door. It looked like a twisted echo, similar to the one described in the legend. "This must be it," Sarah whispered. They pushed the door open, and it groaned loudly, revealing a dusty room with a single decrepit bed in the center. Back at the boathouse, Mia heard a sound. "Jake, did you hear that?" She turned, but he was no longer beside her. Her heart raced as she called out his name, only to be met with silence. The beam of her flashlight wavered, catching the glint of a masked figure in the corner. Liam heard Sarah scream from inside the cabin. He rushed in, finding her standing frozen, pointing at the wall. A shadowy figure was etched there, not painted but seemingly part of the wood itself. They grabbed each other's hands, panic setting in as the figure began to move. Mia stumbled back, her flashlight beam steady on the figure. It was tall, its movements slow and deliberate, the mask featureless and haunting. She couldn't move, paralyzed by fear as it advanced towards her, the hollow echo of its footsteps sending shivers down her spine. Sarah and Liam found an old diary under the bed. Flipping through it, they read about a counselor named Mark, who snapped one summer night. His last entry was a frantic scrawl. "The woods whisper to me. I am becoming one with the hollow echo." Outside, the wind howled louder. Mia's scream echoed through the woods, drawing Liam and Sarah running towards the boathouse. They arrived to find the door ajar, Mia nowhere in sight. The sense of dread grew as they noticed the figure in the distance, holding something limp at its side. The night grew darker, and the figure, now known to be their assailant, seemed to blend into the shadows. Liam suggested they search for Jake and Mia together, using the symbols as a guide. Sarah agreed, her face pale with fear. As they moved cautiously through the woods, they found clues of the others' fates. Mia's scarf caught on a bush, Jake's cap near the lake. Each discovery felt like a nail in their friends' coffins. They stumbled upon an old campfire circle, where the remnants of a fire still smoldered. In the flickering light, the slasher appeared, its mask reflecting the orange glow. They ran, but the figure seemed to anticipate their every move. Sarah twisted her ankle, slowing them down. Liam insisted she hide while he tried to confront the slasher. His heart pounded as he held the oar like a weapon, but the figure was relentless, moving with an unnatural grace. Huddled behind a fallen tree, Sarah could only listen in horror as she heard Liam's cries abruptly cut short. Silence fell, and the slasher emerged, now holding the oar stained with blood. She bit her lip to stifle a scream. The slasher began a slow, deliberate search. Sarah knew she had to move. Crawling quietly, she made her way to the old camp office, hoping to find a phone or any means of help. Inside the office, Sarah found old photographs of campers and counselors. One picture caught her eye. Mark, the counselor, smiling beside a group of children, but one child wore a similar mask, standing apart, eyes devoid of life. A sudden crash from outside made her jump. The slasher had found the office door. Sarah hid in a closet, the air thick with the smell of mildew and something sinister. Time seemed to stretch endlessly. Sarah's phone had no signal, but she sent a desperate text to the local sheriff, praying it would reach him. Outside, the slasher's hollow footsteps circled the building. The sheriff, a skeptical man named Deputy Collins, received the text. He had heard the hollow echo stories but never believed them. Now he gathered a team, deciding it was time to investigate the old campsite. In the closet, Sarah's breaths were shallow. She heard the slasher rummaging through the office. The sound of each item being tossed aside was a countdown to her discovery. Deputy Collins and his team arrived at the wood's edge. The atmosphere was heavy, and the legend weighed on their minds. "This is just superstition," Collins said, trying to boost morale. Yet deep inside, he felt a growing unease. The slasher found Sarah's hiding spot. She screamed, lunging at it with a broken broomstick. Her fight was brief, but her spirit was fierce. The slasher paused, as if contemplating her bravery. Collins and his team heard the distant scream. They rushed through the woods, guns drawn, but they were too late. They found the office, signs of struggle everywhere, and Sarah's phone lying shattered on the floor. The team split up to cover more ground. Collins found the diary, piecing together Mark's story. It seemed the child in the photo had been an outcast, bullied until Mark's madness offered a dark refuge. One by one, the deputies met their fate, falling to the slasher's blade. Collins, the last remaining, realized the truth too late. The hollow echo wasn't just a spirit, it was a legacy, passed on by those who sought vengeance. Sarah awoke in the old mess hall, bound to a chair. The slasher stood before her, the mask removed to reveal a face that was both familiar and alien. It was Mark, but his eyes were empty, a vessel for the wood's wrath. Mark spoke, his voice a hollow whisper. "You shouldn't have come." Sarah tried to reason, to plead, but it was clear that Mark was beyond saving. The woods had claimed him, and now it wanted more. Collins burst in, gun aimed, but Mark turned, and the echo of a shot rang out. Sarah watched in horror as Collins fell, and Mark approached, the mask slipping back into place. In a final act of defiance, Sarah kicked over the lantern beside her, setting the hall ablaze. Flames engulfed the room as Mark's screams mixed with the wood's twisted symphony. Days later, the charred remains of the camp were examined. No bodies were found, only the diary, now partially burned. The legend of the hollow echo persisted, a warning to those who dared to disturb the past. The townsfolk spoke in hushed tones of the night the woods took their vengeance. And every autumn, when the fog rolled in, they swore they could hear the chilling echo of footsteps, a reminder that some tales are best left untold. The end of the story left an unsettling feeling in Brooksville. Newcomers were warned, and the woods remained undisturbed, a silent sentinel guarding the secrets within. The hollow echo became a symbol of fear, a tale that ensured the past stayed buried. In the heart of the Appalachian Mountains, there lay a town named Ravenswood, shrouded in a perpetual haze of mystery. The locals spoke in hushed tones about the Silent Reaper, a slasher with no soul, believed to wander the abandoned mines that honeycombed the earth beneath the town. A group of college friends, Evelyn, Noah, Zoe, and Alex, embarked on a weekend trip to Ravenswood, drawn by the allure of its grim folklore. They arrived at dusk, the sky bleeding shades of crimson and violet as they set up camp near the entrance to the old mines. As the night descended, they gathered around a campfire, the flames casting dancing shadows. Noah recounted the tale of the Silent Reaper, a former miner who lost his mind after a cave-in, forever cursed to harvest the souls of the unwary. The friends laughed it off, but a chill breeze whispered through the trees, carrying the scent of impending doom. Evelyn suggested they explore the mines, dismissing the legend as mere fiction. Armed with lanterns, they descended into the yawning maw of the earth. The air grew cold and stale, and the walls echoed with the distant, haunting sound of pickaxes, though none had worked the mines for years. The tunnels were a labyrinth, and the friends marveled at the eerie beauty of the crystals embedded in the walls. Zoe's laughter echoed, creating a false sense of security, but the silence that followed was unnerving. They decided to head deeper, where the main shaft was rumored to be. Alex's lantern flickered, revealing handprints on the walls, streaks of dirt and blood. His heart raced as he pointed them out, but Zoe tried to calm the group, suggesting they were just remnants of past workers. Yet, the unease lingered like a shadow. Noah found an old pickaxe leaning against the wall, its blade tarnished with age. He picked it up, joking about the Silent Reaper's tools. The humor fell flat as a metallic clang resonated through the mine, sounding like a warning from the depths. Evelyn led them to a vast underground chamber, where the remnants of mining operations were frozen in time. Suddenly, the temperature dropped, and their breaths became visible. A figure emerged from the darkness, draped in tattered clothes, its face hidden by a mask fashioned from a helmet and a grim visor. The friends scattered in panic, the slasher's presence commanding the shadows. Evelyn tripped, her scream echoing as she disappeared into the darkness. The others called out, but silence was her only reply. Zoe and Alex found themselves in a narrow tunnel, the walls closing in on their fear. They stumbled upon Evelyn's camera, its screen shattered, footage replaying her final moments, a blur of darkness and a looming figure. Noah, alone and desperate, barricaded himself in a small alcove. He could hear the slasher's methodical footsteps approaching. With each step, the memory of his friend's laughter turned into a distant echo of despair. The Silent Reaper found Noah, its movements devoid of haste. Noah's final stand was brief. The slasher's pickaxe moved with precision, silencing his cries. The walls absorbed the sound, as if the mine itself was alive. Zoe and Alex pressed on, their resolve faltering. They discovered an old map, marked with an X that led to an unknown chamber. Hoping it might offer a clue or an escape, they ventured onward, the darkness pressing in. In the chamber they found old mining equipment and a journal. The writings detailed the cave-in that trapped the miners, one of them named Jacob, who was never found. The last entry was a mad scrawl. "The mine calls for blood." A sudden noise startled them. The Silent Reaper stood at the chamber's entrance, its form barely discernible in the flickering light. Zoe and Alex hid behind a pile of old wooden beams, their breaths held tight. Time stretched painfully. The slasher moved slowly, examining the chamber. Alex whispered a plan to sneak past it, but Zoe was paralyzed, her mind flashing back to the stories she thought were just tales to frighten children. They waited until the slasher turned away, its attention seemingly drawn to the journal. In a rush of adrenaline, they darted out, only to find the tunnels had changed, leading them deeper into the earth's bowels. The Silent Reaper followed, its presence a relentless specter. They found themselves in a vast underground lake, the water still and black. A small boat, decayed and unused, bobbed gently. It was their only escape route. As they pushed the boat offshore, the slasher appeared, its movements now swift and deadly. They paddled frantically, the oar cutting through the water, the slasher's echoes reverberating off the cavern walls. The boat reached the other side, and they scrambled out, the slasher close behind. In a desperate bid, Zoe tripped the slasher, causing it to fall into the lake. They didn't wait to see if it would rise again. They emerged from the mine at dawn, the first light of day blinding after the night's horrors. The town was silent, as if it had been holding its breath. They stumbled into Ravenswood, seeking help, their story spilling out in disjointed fear. The sheriff, a weathered man named Marshall Graves, listened to their tale. Skeptical yet concerned, he organized a search party. Graves had heard the legend before, but never imagined it could be real. Back at the mine, the search party found the chamber where Evelyn's camera lay. The footage was too gruesome to dismiss, and the journal's entries too detailed to ignore. The legend of the Silent Reaper was now a terrifying reality. Zoe and Alex were taken to the local hospital, their physical wounds tended to, but the psychological scars ran deep. They spoke of Evelyn and Noah, their voices trailing off into the silence that now enveloped Ravenswood. Marshall Graves led a second expedition, this time with professionals. They found nothing but the chilling echoes and the remnants of the slasher's presence. The Silent Reaper had vanished as mysteriously as it had appeared. Rumors spread like wildfire. Some said the Reaper was Jacob, trapped and driven mad by the cave-in. Others believed it was something older, a spirit of the mountain awakened by the miners' greed. The town of Ravenswood became a place of whispered warnings. The mines were sealed, but on quiet nights, locals swore they could hear the sound of pickaxes and the cold, silent breath of the Reaper. Years passed, and the story of Zoe and Alex became a cautionary tale. The Silent Reaper's legend grew, deterring those who might have dared to disturb the mountain's peace. Ravenswood remained vigilant, its people wary of the shadows. The friends' lives were forever altered. Zoe became a psychologist, trying to understand the human mind's depths that could birth such horror. Alex turned to art, painting the darkness of the mine and the faceless terror of the Reaper. One night, on the anniversary of the fateful exploration, Zoe returned to Ravenswood. She wanted to confront the past, to find closure. The town was eerily quiet, the mine's sealed entrance a looming testament to their ordeal. Zoe felt an inexplicable pull to the mountain. She approached the mine's mouth, the cold seeping into her bones. She imagined she saw the silent Reaper's shadow just at the edge of her vision, a reminder that some legends are born of truth. The next morning, the townsfolk found Zoe standing by the mine, her expression serene. She spoke of a vision, Evelyn and Noah at peace, the silent Reaper dissolving into the mountain. Whether truth or a tale to soothe her own fears, Ravenswood took it as a sign. The legend of the silent Reaper became a part of Ravenswood's history, a story to tell when the nights are long and the winds howl through the trees. The mine remained sealed and the town lived on, its heart beating a little slower, always listening for the silent harvest of souls. In the secluded hamlet of Nightingale, nestled within the dense forests of upstate New York, the legend of the soulless sentinel loomed large. It was said that on the coldest nights, a slasher roamed with a mask of pale porcelain, a remnant of a tragic past that the town preferred to forget. A group of thrill-seeking college students, Emma, Tyler, Casey, and Sam, arrived in Nightingale, drawn by the town's eerie reputation. They checked into a quaint inn where locals exchanged uneasy glances upon seeing them. The innkeeper warned them of the woods, but youth and skepticism made them bold. That evening, they ventured into the forest, the trees towering like ancient guardians. They sought the old Nightingale Manor, where the sentinel was rumored to have originated. The air was crisp, their breath visible as wisps of fog drifted between the trees. As they approached the manor, its decrepit state was evident. Vines choked the stone facade and windows were like empty eyes. They stepped inside, the floorboards creaking underfoot. The atmosphere was thick with dust and memories of horror. The manor was filled with antique furniture covered in sheets, and portraits of stern faces seemed to watch their every move. Casey found a diary from 1923 detailing the life of a young woman named Eliza, who crafted a porcelain mask as an art piece for her lover, Jonathan. Sam and Tyler explored the kitchen area, finding old cutlery in a butcher's block. The tools were rusted, yet some knives gleamed as if recently used. A shiver ran down Sam's spine, and Tyler's joke about needing them for camping fell flat. Emma discovered a hidden staircase leading to the basement. She beckoned the others, curiosity overriding her fear. The descent was damp and chilling, the walls echoing with the sound of their hesitant footsteps. In the basement they found an old workshop, tools scattered as if abandoned in haste. A chilling draft carried the scent of something metallic and foul. The sentinel's presence felt imminent, the air charged with anticipation. Casey read aloud from Eliza's diary. Jonathan had been disfigured in a fire, and Eliza crafted the mask to hide his scars. But madness took hold, and he vanished one night, leaving only the diary and the mask behind. A sudden clatter made them all jump. The door to the workshop slammed shut, and the sound of footsteps echoed above. Panic set in as they realized they weren't alone. The soulless sentinel was home. They scrambled to find an exit, but the doors and windows were all blocked. The sentinel appeared, its porcelain mask unnervingly smooth, eyes painted on that seemed to follow their every move. Its hands were clad in gloves, stained with a history of violence. The friends split up, hoping to find a way out. Emma and Casey stumbled upon a ballroom where chandeliers swayed gently, casting flickering light. They could almost hear the phantom echoes of a long-forgotten party, the air thick with spectral gaiety. Tyler and Sam found themselves in a library, books strewn about as if the sentinel had been searching for something. They heard a noise and hid behind a large oak desk, the slasher's footsteps growing louder, a methodical search for its prey. Emma and Casey discovered a portrait of Jonathan, the mask in his hands. His eyes in the painting seemed tormented, as if he pleaded with them to understand his tragic fate. The room grew colder, and they felt an unseen watcher. The sentinel found Tyler and Sam, its approach silent as death. They emerged from their hiding spot, only to come face to face with the mask. Tyler tried to reason, but the sentinel's blade spoke a language of silence. Casey heard a muffled scream and knew they had to move. She and Emma found a secret passage behind a bookcase. It was dark and narrow, but it offered a chance to escape or meet a darker fate. As they crawled through the passage, they could hear the sentinel's unearthly whispers, as if it communicated with the house itself. The walls seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy, and the friends pushed forward, driven by sheer terror. The passage led to the garden, statues of past Nightingale residents staring blankly. Emma noticed one statue had a recent scratch, as if something, or someone, had brushed against it. The sentinel was close. They hid among the hedges, watching as the sentinel searched the manor. Its movements were graceful yet deadly, a silent hunter in the night. Emma and Casey felt the weight of the situation. They were in a fight for survival. Back inside, the sentinel found the ballroom. The chandelier above swayed, casting light that made the mask seem alive. It paused, as if remembering, before resuming its search with renewed vigor. The girls decided to split up, doubling their chances of finding help. Emma headed towards the main gate, while Casey sought the old caretaker's cabin at the edge of the property. Both were desperate, their hearts pounding with each step. Emma reached the gate, only to find it chained. She turned to see the sentinel approaching, its steps silent on the grass. Her mind raced for a plan, but fear gripped her tightly, making her limbs feel like lead. Casey found the caretaker's cabin, the door hanging ajar. Inside, she discovered letters from Eliza to Jonathan, filled with love and despair. The last letter spoke of the mask coming alive, taking on a life of its own. The sentinel cornered Emma, who found herself back in the ballroom. She picked up a candelabrum, her trembling hands casting shaky light on the sentinel's approaching form. The painted eyes seemed to hold a cold, unfeeling gaze. Casey heard Emma's distant cry and knew she had to act. She lit a fire in the cabin, hoping the smoke would signal for help. As she watched the flames grow, she felt the sentinel's presence behind her. The fire blazed, and the sentinel, now revealed as a gaunt figure in a porcelain mask, stepped into the light. Casey stood her ground, her fear turning to anger. She shouted, demanding to know why, but the sentinel only raised its blade. A distant siren pierced the night. The sentinel turned, hesitated, and vanished into the shadows. The town's emergency services had arrived, drawn by the cabin's smoke signal. Emma was found in the ballroom unharmed but shaken. The sentinel had disappeared as mysteriously as it had appeared. The manor stood silent once more, its secrets kept within stone and mask. The friends reunited, their faces pale, their stories of the night adding layers to the legend of the soulless sentinel. The mask, a beautiful yet cursed creation, was said to have trapped Jonathan's soul, turning him into the town's eternal warden. Nightingale whispered of the event, the townsfolk more adamant about staying away from the manor. The sentinel's story became a warning, a reminder that some love stories end in madness and terror. Emma, Tyler, Casey, and Sam left Nightingale, their bond forever altered by the night's events. They spoke little of it, but the silence between them was filled with the echoes of the sentinel's footsteps. Years later, Casey wrote a novel based on their experience, a fictional account that became a bestseller. The porcelain mask became an iconic image, a symbol of the horror they had faced. The town of Nightingale turned into a minor tourist attraction for the brave and the morbidly curious. Guided tours stopped at the manor's gates, but none dared to enter. The sentinel's legacy was too strong. One chilly autumn night, on the anniversary of their escape, Casey returned alone. She stood before the manor, the wind carrying the scent of the past. She left a single red rose at the gate, a silent tribute to the souls trapped within. Inside the manor, now watched by security cameras, the sentinel was never seen again. Yet, on the coldest nights, visitors claimed to see a shadow move just beyond the camera's reach, a testament to the unquiet spirit of Jonathan. The soulless sentinel remained an unseen guardian, its story a chilling tale that Nightingale couldn't shake off. The mask, if it still existed, was a hidden relic of a love turned monstrous. Casey's novel sparked a series of movies, each Halloween bringing back the tale of the Sentinel. Nightingale embraced the notoriety, but the locals still avoided the woods, respecting the Sentinel's domain. The friends, now scattered across the country, occasionally spoke. Their conversations danced around the night at Nightingale Manor, an unspoken agreement to keep the horror at bay. Yet each of them heard the Sentinel's footsteps in their dreams. The innkeeper and Nightingale kept the story alive, telling it to new visitors. The warning was clear: respect the past or become part of it. The soulless Sentinel was more than a story. It was a guardian of forgotten sorrows. The final chapter of the Sentinel's legend seemed unwritten, its presence a constant in the town's lore. Nightingale remained a place where the line between myth and reality was as thin as the porcelain mask the Sentinel wore. For those who lived through that night, the soulless Sentinel was a reminder that some tales of love and loss are sharpened by the blade of fate, leaving scars that time could not heal. The manor stood as a silent sentinel itself, guarding the secrets of the night when souls were bared to the bone. In the desolate stretches of the Mojave Desert, there lay a ghost town named Spectre Gulch, infamous for its haunted past. The legend of the phantom stalker whispered through the dry winds, a slasher whose spirit was said to wander the abandoned streets, seeking those who dare disturb his domain. A band of friends, Riley, Ava, Lucas, and Max, embarked on a road trip, their journey leading them to the outskirts of Spectre Gulch. Skeptical of the tales, they sought to document the town for a school project on American folklore. Their car kicked up dust as they drove into the heart of the forsaken place. The sun began to set, painting the sky in fiery hues as they stepped into the ghost town. Buildings stood like tombstones, weathered and silent. The air was still, but for the occasional creak of rusty metal in the wind. They set up their base in an old saloon, the wooden floorboards groaning under their weight. Behind the bar, they found bottles from a bygone era, and on the walls, faded wanted posters. One poster bore the face of a man with a distinctive scar, rumored to be the phantom stalker. As twilight descended, Ava and Riley decided to explore the sheriff's office, hoping to find more about the town's history. Lucas and Max stayed behind, setting up cameras to capture any paranormal activity. Inside the sheriff's office, Ava discovered a rusted badge and a dusty ledger. The ledger detailed a string of unsolved disappearances from over a century ago. The last entry mentioned a vigilante justice gone wrong, the accused man never found after a lynch mob stormed the jail. Riley found a hidden trapdoor. Curiosity piqued. They opened it, revealing a narrow staircase leading into darkness. Without hesitation, they descended, the chill of the underground biting at their heels. Lucas and Max heard a distant echo, like a mournful wail, and checked the footage from the cameras. The images flickered, capturing fleeting shadows that seemed to dance just out of sight. Ava and Riley reached the bottom of the stairs, finding themselves in an underground chamber. The walls were adorned with cryptic symbols, and in the center lay a noose, swinging gently as if touched by an unseen hand. Back at the saloon, Lucas and Max reviewed the eerie footage. Suddenly, the front door of the saloon slammed shut and the room temperature dropped. They looked up to see the phantom stalker, his porcelain-like mask devoid of emotion. Ava and Riley stumbled upon an old diary in the chamber. It belonged to the accused man, detailing his escape from the mob and his descent into madness. The final entry was a chilling declaration: "I am become the desert's avenger." The stalker moved with an unnatural grace, approaching Lucas and Max. They scrambled for their gear, trying to capture the entity, but the stalker seemed to exist beyond the reach of their technology. Riley felt a cold breath on her neck, turning slowly to see the stalker's mask reflected in an old mirror. Ava's flashlight beam caught the jagged scar on the stalker's arm, matching the poster upstairs. Lucas attempted to communicate, asking what the stalker wanted. In response, the stalker raised a finger to its lips as if to shush them, then vanished, leaving a gust of freezing air in its wake. Max suggested they leave immediately, but the doors and windows were inexplicably sealed. Trapped, they had to confront the reality of the legend. The stalker was not just a myth, it was their grim host. Ava and Riley found a series of tunnels branching out from the chamber. They decided to follow one, hoping it would lead them back to the surface or to an exit from the town's cursed grip. Lucas and Max searched the saloon for any historical artifact that might help. Lucas found a map of the town, with the tunnels marked in red. It seemed to suggest a route, but the stalker's reappearance sent them scrambling for cover. The tunnels echoed with the sound of distant footsteps. Ava and Riley pressed on, the walls closing in around them. They imagined they could hear the whispers of the long-gone townsfolk, murmuring warnings in the dark. The stalker appeared to Lucas and Max again, this time holding an old, tattered photograph. It was a picture of the town's residents, and among them was the man from the poster. The stalker dropped it and pointed to the map. Ava and Riley emerged from the tunnels into an unfamiliar part of the ghost town. They saw the saloon but noticed Lucas and Max were not there. Panic set in as they realized their friends might be in danger. Lucas understood the stalker's gesture. The map indicated a mine shaft that might be their only escape. They had to find it before night fully enveloped the town, and the stalker claimed them. The sun dipped below the horizon, and the town was plunged into darkness. Ava and Riley called out for their friends, their voices swallowed by the desert's vast silence. The stalker's presence felt closer than ever. Lucas and Max ventured into the mine, the air heavy with dust and the scent of old explosives. The shaft was unstable, but desperation drove them forward. The stalker's footsteps echoed behind them, relentless. Ava and Riley found the saloon empty. Fear clawed at their minds as they pieced together what might have happened. They decided to follow the map, hoping to reunite with Lucas and Max. Deep within the mine, Lucas and Max stumbled upon an old cart. They pushed it along the tracks, hoping it would lead them to safety. The stalker appeared at the end of the tunnel. Its eyes in the mask seemed to glow with an otherworldly light. Ava and Riley reached the mine entrance, calling out for their friends. They ventured in, their flashlights flickering, casting fleeting light on the walls that seemed to close in with every step. The cart carried Lucas and Max to an underground lake. The stalker stood on the shore, motionless. Max took a chance, diving into the water, hoping it was not a dead end. Lucas followed, the cold water shocking them into adrenaline-fueled action. Ava and Riley found the cart, hearing Max's and Lucas's voices from the lake. Relief washed over them, but it was short-lived as the stalker emerged, blocking their path. They had to move quickly, or become the next victims. Lucas and Max swam to a submerged opening, pushing through until they found themselves in a cavern. A narrow path led upward, promising daylight. They scrambled up, the stalker's presence urging them forward. Ava and Riley decided to confront the stalker. Ava held up the diary, speaking to it, pleading for understanding. The stalker paused, its scarred hand reaching out as if to grasp the past. The friends reunited at the cavern's exit, daylight piercing their eyes. They stumbled out, the ghost town behind them feeling like a weight lifted from their souls. The townsfolk of the nearest settlement listened to their tale, some nodding as if they already knew the ending. The legend of the phantom stalker grew, with Riley, Ava, Lucas, and Max as its unwilling witnesses. The friends returned home, the experience etching itself into their memories, the diary and photograph they left behind, hoping the stalker could find peace without them. Years later, Lucas became a historian researching the stalker's story. He found records of the man's betrayal, a tale of greed and vengeance. The scar on his face was from a fight with a rattlesnake, not a mob's cruelty. Ava wrote a haunting melody, inspired by their ordeal. The song became popular, its lyrics speaking of shadows in the desert and a soul lost to the night. Riley and Max avoided the limelight, but their encounter with the stalker changed them. They spoke less of the supernatural, more of the fragility of life and the echoes of the past. Spectre Gulch remained a ghost town, visited by few. The phantom stalker's legend kept it so, his tale a reminder that some wounds never heal, festering into stories that chill the blood. Lucas returned once alone, to lay a peace offering at the old saloon, a new photograph, one of the friends together, smiling. He hoped it would appease the restless spirit. That night, a storm swept through the desert, a rare occurrence. The townsfolk said it was the stalker's final cry, his spirit washed away by the heavens' tears. In the years that followed, the friends lived with the memory. They rarely spoke of it, But the experience forged an unbreakable bond. The Phantom Stalker's legend lived on, a silent guardian of Spectre Gulch, a story that would be told for generations. The desert returned to its quiet vigil, the sun baking the earth, the winds carrying tales of the stalker to distant ears. Spectre Gulch stood as a monument to a terror that once stalked its streets, a slasher without a soul, whose story would forever haunt the land. For Riley, Ava, Lucas, and Max, the desert held a secret that they carried silently, a testament to the night when shadows walked, and a soulless figure showed them the true face of fear. The Phantom Stalker's legacy was an unspoken pact among them, a shared nightmare under the vast starlit sky. In the heart of Chicago, the chilling wind carried whispers of the city's dark past. Among these, the tale of the Hollowed Hawk, a slasher whose legend was born from the real-life horrors of H.H. Holmes, the infamous serial killer who operated during the 1893 World's Fair. A group of true crime enthusiasts, Lena, Jake, Zoe, and Marcus, planned a weekend to explore the city's sinister history. Their itinerary included a visit to the site of Holmes's murder castle, now a quiet lot, but once a place of unspeakable terror. They arrived at the site as dusk settled over the city. The lot was empty, but the energy was palpable, as if the ground itself remembered the atrocities committed there. Lena, clutching a book about Holmes, felt a shiver that had nothing to do with the cold. Nearby, an old pawn shop caught their attention. The shopkeeper, a grizzled man with knowing eyes, spoke of a cursed artifact, a hawk-shaped locket believed to have belonged to Holmes, said to bring misfortune to its bearer. Intrigued, Marcus bought the locket, its weight heavy in his hand. The shopkeeper warned him, "It's a token of the Hollowed Hawk. You'd be wise to heed the tales." That night, they rented a vintage apartment in a historic building. As they unpacked, the locket opened on its own, revealing a small, cryptic note inside. "The hawk watches over his nest." Jake researched the locket online, finding references to a series of unsolved murders in the 70s linked to the Hollowed Hawk. The victims were found with a similar hawk emblem etched into their belongings. Zoe noticed strange markings on the locket, resembling those on the castle's blueprints Lena had shown them. It was as if the locket was a key to a forgotten part of the building's design. The apartment's atmosphere grew tense. Shadows seemed to move at the edge of their vision, and a cold draft swept through the rooms, despite all windows being shut tight. Lena suggested they retrace Holmes's steps, hoping to understand the connection. They agreed, and the next morning they set out with a mixture of dread and excitement. Their first stop was the site of the castle. As they stood there, Marcus felt an inexplicable urge to wear the locket. The moment it hung around his neck, the air seemed to thicken. Jake pointed out the locations of the hidden rooms and chutes Holmes used. Lena described the gas chambers and secret passages, her voice barely above a whisper. Zoe spotted an alleyway that seemed to pulse with a dark history. They followed it, ending at a decrepit door, barely attached to its hinges. The locket grew warm against Marcus's skin. Inside, they found a forgotten speakeasy, its walls adorned with faded murals. The place felt untouched by time, as if it had been waiting for them. The group split up to explore. Lena and Jake headed to the bar area, where dusty bottles and old cocktail recipes hinted at a lively past now silenced. Zoe and Marcus discovered a hidden room with a collection of newspaper clippings about Holmes. Among them was a sketch of the Hollowed Hawk, its eyes piercing through the paper. Lena and Jake found a trapdoor under the bar. It creaked open to reveal a dark stairwell. They descended, the air growing colder, the locket's warmth a stark contrast. The underground room was a macabre museum. Surgical tools lined the walls, relics of Holmes' grim trade. Lena's flashlight caught the glint of the hawk emblem on a rusted scalpel. Zoe and Marcus heard a sound like chains dragging. They rushed to the others, the locket now burning hot. Marcus tore it from his neck, dropping it to the floor. The lights flickered and a figure emerged from the shadows. Dressed in a long coat and wearing a mask with a hawk's visage, the Hollowed Hawk stood before them, the locket at its feet. Frozen in fear, they watched as the figure picked up the locket, its movements slow and deliberate. It seemed to study them, as if deciding their fate. The hawk turned and vanished into the darkness, leaving behind a chilling silence. The friends scrambled upstairs, their hearts pounding in their chests. Back at the apartment, they couldn't shake the image of the hawk. Each noise made them jump, and the locket's absence left a void that seemed to grow larger with each passing hour. Lena proposed they consult with a local historian, someone who might shed light on the locket's curse. They found Dr. Emily Hawthorne, an expert on Chicago's dark tales. Dr. Hawthorne listened intently, her eyes widening at the mention of the hollowed hawk. She revealed a theory. The locket was a conduit, summoning the hawk's spirit to continue Holmes's legacy. Zoe felt a chill as she realized the warmth of the locket had disappeared from Marcus's neck at the speakeasy. Was it a sign they had already been marked? The historian offered them an old ritual to cleanse the locket's curse. They needed to return to the site of the castle at midnight, the locket in hand, and recite a passage from Holmes's own confession. As night fell, they returned to the site. The locket had mysteriously reappeared in Marcus's bag, colder than ice. They gathered their courage, the ritual their last hope. Midnight struck, and they began the incantation. The wind howled, and the locket started to glow, casting an eerie light on their faces. The figure of the hollowed hawk materialized before them, silent and imposing. They continued the chant, their voices trembling as the locket's light intensified. Suddenly, the light extinguished, and the hawk's figure began to dissolve into the night. The ritual had worked, or so it seemed. Relief washed over them. Days later, Zoe found a hawk feather in her bag, identical to the ones on the emblem. She couldn't shake the feeling that the hawk was still watching. Lena started having nightmares, visions of Holmes and the hawk merging into one terrifying entity. The historian's warning echoed in her mind. Some curses are not so easily broken. Jake researched further, finding accounts of people who had attempted similar rituals. Many met with unfortunate, untimely ends. They wondered if they had truly escaped. Marcus became obsessed with the locket, studying it for hours. One night, he vanished without a trace, the locket gone with him. The others feared the worst. The police found little evidence, and Marcus's disappearance became another unsolved mystery. Lena, Jake, and Zoe left Chicago, the weight of the hollowed hawk's curse heavy on their shoulders. Years passed, and Lena became a novelist, penning a story about the hawk. Her book became a sensation, the tale too gripping to ignore. Jake turned into a detective, driven by the need to understand unsolved cases. Zoe became a therapist, helping others cope with unseen fears. Each of them, in their own way, dealt with the aftermath. But on quiet nights, they could hear the whisper of wings and the cold, calculating gaze of the hollowed hawk. Chicago's history remained stained by the blood of its past. The site of Holmes Castle was a place where some still claimed to feel a presence, a watcher in the shadows. Lena's novel sparked a film adaptation, drawing attention back to the legend. The cursed hawk locket became an iconic symbol, reigniting the city's fascination with its own darkness. One Halloween, a group of fans reenacted the ritual for a documentary. The night ended in tragedy, with screams echoing the forgotten halls of the murder castle. The hollowed hawk's legend grew, entwined with Holmes's legacy. It served as a chilling reminder that some stories, once born from reality, take on a life of their own in the realm of the supernatural. Lena, Jake, and Zoe never returned to Chicago. They lived with the memory of Marcus and the night the hollowed hawk came for them. The curse, it seemed, was a scar they would bear forever. In the end, the story of the hollowed hawk was more than a slasher tale. It was a haunting echo of real evil, a specter that would not rest, bound by a curse woven into the very fabric of Chicago's haunted history. In the secluded town of Brooksville, nestled deep within the Appalachian Mountains, locals spoke in hushed tones of the Wraith of Weaver's Hollow, a slasher spirit said to be the vengeful ghost of a long-dead serial killer, Silas Weaver. His legend was born from the real-life horrors of the 1930s when he terrorized the area, and his story was as chilling as the autumn air. Brooksville was not on the typical tourist route, but for a group of college students, Emma, Liam, Harper, and Noah, the town's dark history was too tempting to ignore. They arrived with backpacks filled with recording equipment, intent on capturing evidence of the supernatural for their paranormal studies class. The town's main street was lined with antique shops and diners, but one place drew their attention: a decrepit house on the outskirts, rumored to be the last remnants of Weaver's Hollow. It stood as a grim reminder of the past, its windows like empty eye sockets. They approached the house cautiously, the ground crunching beneath their feet. The air was thick with the scent of decay and history. Emma, the group's de facto leader, carried a copy of a local newspaper from 1935 detailing Silas Weaver's crimes. Inside the house, the team set up their base. Harper and Noah began to place cameras and motion sensors, while Liam and Emma sifted through old documents they had brought, hoping to find a connection to the wraith. As dusk settled, the house revealed its unwelcoming nature. The temperature dropped suddenly, and the equipment started to malfunction. Noah's camera caught fleeting shadows, but Harper's EMF meter spiked as if something unseen was close. Emma found a diary among the papers, written by a survivor of Weaver's terror. The entries were filled with fear and mentions of a hollowed man, a phrase that sent shivers down her spine. Liam uncovered a map of the town from the 30s, showing hidden tunnels that connected to the house. Weaver's escape routes, he muttered, the pieces of the puzzle starting to fit together. The group decided to explore the tunnels, hoping they might reveal more about the wraith's origins. They equipped themselves with flashlights and the diary, which seemed to guide them. The entrance to the tunnels was hidden beneath an old trapdoor in the house's kitchen. As they lifted it, a rush of cold air ascended, carrying with it a faint, musty odor. They descended into the darkness, the walls of the tunnel pressing in. Emma read aloud from the diary, the words echoing off the stone. The hollowed man walks where light fears to tread. Noah's camera flickered, capturing a figure just beyond the beam of their flashlights. It was tall, with a shape that seemed to absorb the light around it. Harper felt a hand brush against her arm, but when she turned, there was nothing there. The sensation of being watched intensified, and the group pressed on, driven by a mix of fear and curiosity. The tunnel led them to an old speakeasy, its entrance concealed behind a false wall. The room was eerily preserved, with bottles and instruments left as if the party had ended abruptly. Liam spotted an old newspaper clipping on the wall, announcing the capture and subsequent disappearance of Silas Weaver. The article hinted at corruption and cover-ups, suggesting Weaver might have been an unwitting pawn. Emma's flashlight caught a reflection from a cracked mirror. In the glass, the wraith of Weaver's Hollow appeared behind them, its form barely discernible, yet undeniably there. They scrambled back to the house, the wraith seemingly following, its presence a chilling whisper in the dark. Once above ground, they bolted the trapdoor shut, hoping to seal the entity below. That night, staying in a nearby inn, they reviewed the footage. The wraith's image was clear, its eyes like voids. Harper suggested they consult with a local historian to understand what they were dealing with. The historian, an elderly man named Mr. Caldwell, spoke of Weaver with a mixture of fear and fascination. He revealed that Weaver had been lynched by townsfolk and his body never found, fueling tales of his return. Mr. Caldwell mentioned a cleansing ritual, one that required the blood of Weaver's lineage. The group learned that an heirloom locket, said to contain a lock of Weaver's hair, was housed in the town's museum. They retrieved the locket, its weight unnervingly heavy. As they opened it, a gust of wind blew out their candles and the room grew cold. Midnight approached, and they gathered in the house's main room. The locket began to glow, emitting a soft, eerie light that bathed their faces in an otherworldly hue. As they began the incantation, the wraith materialized, its form more solid than before. The locket's glow intensified, and the room was filled with the sound of an anguished wail. The ritual demanded they return to the house at the stroke of midnight on the anniversary of Weaver's death. The group prepared, knowing the risk but driven by a need to end the wraith's reign. The ritual reached its climax, and the locket shattered, releasing a burst of light that engulfed the wraith. When the light faded, the spirit was gone, leaving behind a silence that spoke of peace, or perhaps a lull. Days passed, and the town seemed lighter, but the group couldn't shake the feeling of unease. Had they truly banished the wraith, or was it merely biding its time? Emma returned to college, her studies focused on the psychology of fear. The diary became her obsession, its stories too real, its warnings too vivid. Liam threw himself into debunking other local legends, needing to feel he was fighting the darkness. Harper and Noah, however, were drawn to the paranormal, the encounter with the wraith igniting a passion for the unknown. One by one, they began to notice changes. Shadows seemed to follow Emma. Whispers haunted Liam's recordings. Harper's dreams were filled with the wraith, and Noah's camera lenses often fogged with what looked like breath. Years later, Emma published a novel based on Weaver's Hollow, a fictional account that resonated with readers. The success was bittersweet, each page a reminder of that night. Liam became a well-known podcaster, his series on the Wraith of Weaver's Hollow topping charts. Yet he never revealed the true extent of their experience. Harper and Noah teamed up to create a documentary about their ordeal. The footage they captured that night became the centerpiece, but they edited out the most personal parts, protecting their friends' privacy. The town of Brooksville slowly embraced its haunted heritage, turning it into a tourist attraction. Halloween brought thrill seekers, but the locals knew better than to take the legend lightly. Emma, Liam, Harper, and Noah reunited on the 10-year anniversary of their encounter. They visited the house, now a museum, the locket displayed behind glass. As they stood there, a young tourist dropped a camera, and they all heard the unmistakable sound of the wraith's approach. The room chilled, and their breaths turned to mist. They left quickly, the encounter a stark reminder that some stories are best left untold. The Wraith of Weaver's Hollow was not a tale to be trifled with. It was a warning. Brooksville remained a place of intrigue, its hills echoing with the silent steps of the wraith. The entity was an ever-present shadow, a testament to the town's refusal to forget its past. The friends went their separate ways again, the pact of their experience unspoken. But in the quiet moments they each felt the wraith's gaze, a spectral watcher in the corners of their vision. The legend of Silas Weaver and the Wraith of Weaver's Hollow became a fixture in American folklore, a slasher without a soul, haunting the hearts of those who dared to delve into the darkness. Emma's novel, Liam's podcast, Harper and Noah's documentary, all contributed to the mythos, but none captured the true horror they had faced. In the end, the wraith was more than just a story. It was a part of them, a chilling legacy that whispered in the wind and echoed in the hollows of their minds. Brooksville's terror lived on, a spectral slasher in the annals of the town's haunted history. In the misty outskirts of a small town named Ravenswood, nestled in the dense forests of West Virginia, the legend of the Banshee Blade whispered through generations. It was said to be the spirit of a serial killer, a former coal miner named Jonas Banshee Black, who had murdered his victims with a blade forged from the depths of the mines. A group of friends, Ava, Ethan, Mia, and Lucas, embarked on a road trip to Ravenswood, drawn by the town's eerie lore. They aimed to document their findings for a college project on American urban legends. Ravenswood was a ghost of its former self, with abandoned mine shafts and dilapidated buildings. The townsfolk were wary, their eyes carrying the weight of history as they spoke of Banshee's wrath. The friends set up camp near the old mine entrance, where Banshee had supposedly met his end in a cave-in after a vigilante mob cornered him. The air was thick with tension and the scent of damp earth. Ava, the group's historian, had unearthed a journal from the early 1900s belonging to a miner who worked alongside Banshee. The writings detailed the man's descent into madness and his obsession with a cursed blade. Ethan, the tech-savvy member, installed cameras around the mine entrance, hoping to capture any spectral activity. The devices flickered as if acknowledging an unseen presence. As night fell, the forest around them seemed to come alive. The wind carried a mournful wail, reminiscent of a banshee's cry, sending shivers down their spines. Mia suggested they perform a seance to communicate with Banshee's spirit, an idea met with skepticism, but eventually agreed upon due to their shared thrill-seeking. They gathered around a makeshift circle, using the journal as a guide. Lucas, nervous but resolute, began to chant the incantation scribbled in faded ink. The ground trembled, and the cameras Ethan had set up began to whir uncontrollably. Shadows danced on the walls and the temperature dropped sharply. Suddenly, the blade from the journal's sketches seemed to materialize, hovering ominously before them. Its edge glowed with an otherworldly light. The banshee blade moved as if guided by an invisible hand, slicing through the air with a keen metallic ring. The friends scattered, panic setting in. They fled to the town, seeking refuge in an old tavern. The bartender, a grizzled man named Harold, listened to their tale, his expression unreadable. Harold revealed that he was a descendant of the miners who had sealed Banshee in the mine. He spoke of a family heirloom, a whistle used to summon protection from the spirits of good miners. Intrigued, Ava persuaded Harold to lend them the whistle. Its brass was worn, but it seemed to hum with a life of its own. That night, they returned to the mine, the whistle's tune a fragile shield against the darkness. Ethan's cameras were retrieved, their footage showing nothing but static and fleeting shadows. As they ventured deeper into the mine, the whistle's sound echoed off the walls, creating a disorienting symphony of fear and hope. Lucas stumbled upon an old pickaxe marked with runes, similar to those in the journal. It was as if the mine was slowly revealing its secrets, piece by haunted piece. Mia's flashlight caught the glint of something metallic, a series of chained doors that seemed to lead to an untouched part of the mine. They unlocked the doors, the Banshee blade's presence growing stronger. Ava read from the journal, "Where the coal meets the air, the Banshee will declare." They found themselves in a cavern where the air was still and heavy. The Banshee blade reappeared, its glow illuminating the terrified faces of the group. Ethan's tech suddenly worked, capturing the blade as it moved toward them. Ava blew the whistle, a piercing note that seemed to resonate with the very soul of the mine. The blade hesitated, and ethereal figures of miners appeared, surrounding the friends protectively. The whistle's magic was undeniable, a beacon of light against the cursed blade. A fierce spectral battle ensued, the good spirits against the malevolent force of Banshee. The mine shook, and the friends clung to each other, the whistle's sound their only solace. When the struggle reached its zenith, the Banshee blade shattered, its fragments disappearing into the mine's dark crevices. Silence returned, and the spirits faded, leaving the friends alone. They emerged from the mine at dawn, the experience etched into their memories. The whistle, now silent, felt heavier with the burden of its use. Back at college, they pieced together their footage and notes. The project, once academic, became a personal odyssey, a journey through fear and folklore. Ava's detailed analysis of the journal earned her accolades, but she kept the true events of that night private. Ethan's footage was both evidence and enigma, sparking more questions than answers. Mia and Lucas found themselves drawn to spiritual studies, the encounter with Banshee igniting a quest for understanding the veil between worlds. Ravenswood slowly returned to its quiet existence, the mine a less foreboding presence. Yet, the legend of the Banshee blade remained, a cautionary tale for those who would disturb the past. The friends never forgot the chilling cry of the Banshee or the protective hum of the whistle. Each went their separate ways, but the pact they formed that night held them together in spirit. Ava became a renowned historian, her work on Ravenswood's history both celebrated and controversial. She never published the full account of the Banshee blade. Ethan's footage was eventually released, becoming an internet sensation. Theories abounded, but the truth of that spectral confrontation remained theirs alone. Years later, a new generation of students came to Ravenswood, eager to explore the mine. Ava, Ethan, Mia, and Lucas watched from a distance, hoping the past would stay buried. The mine became a point of interest for paranormal enthusiasts, but the friends ensured the whistle remained hidden, a secret weapon against the darkness. Ravenswood's legend grew, a blend of truth and myth. The Banshee blade was a story told around campfires, a reminder of the night when four friends faced a slasher without a soul. The whistle, tucked away safely, was their silent guardian, a token of the spectral miners' pact. Ravenswood's terror lived on, but so did the legacy of their bravery. Mia and Lucas often returned to Ravenswood, drawn by a sense of duty to the spirits who had saved them. They felt a connection to the land, its history now part of their own. In the end, the story of the Banshee blade was more than just a tale of horror. It was a testament to the bonds formed in the face of fear, a spectral slasher held at bay by friendship and the echoes of history. In the forgotten town of Brookdale, an eerie legend persisted. The Phantom Reaper, a slasher with no known origin, had left a trail of unsolved murders. Brookdale was a spectral relic, its once bustling streets now empty. The few remaining residents spoke of the Reaper in hushed, fearful tones. A group of true crime enthusiasts, Eli, Claire, Dean, and Nora, arrived to investigate the legend. They were drawn by the challenge and the mystery of the unsolved cases. Their first stop was the local diner, where an old man warned them away, his eyes haunted by memories he refused to verbalize. Ignoring the warning, they set up camp in the dilapidated outskirts of town. The air was thick with the scent of decay and the promise of secrets. Nora discovered an old diary in the library, detailing the Reaper's methods. Each victim was found with a single, precise cut. No more, no less. As night fell, the crew decided to retrace the killer's steps, heading to the abandoned sawmill where the first murder had taken place. The sawmill was a chilling sight, with rusted machinery and shadows that seemed to move on their own. Dean's flashlight flickered, adding to the unease. Suddenly, a blood-curdling scream split the silence. It was Eli, who had wandered off to get a better shot for their documentary. Claire found him, shaken but unharmed, claiming he saw a figure vanish into the night. The crew's laughter was nervous, but doubt had crept in. They decided to stay the course, their determination to uncover the truth stronger than their fear. The night grew darker, and the sawmill colder. Dean stumbled upon a hidden room, its walls adorned with newspaper clippings about the murders. A chilling presence seemed to watch them. The room's air was thick with the scent of old blood. Nora's research revealed that the sawmill had been the site of a massacre, the details lost to time. Outside, the wind howled, and they heard footsteps crunching on the gravel. Panic-stricken, they barricaded themselves in the room. Time ticked away, and the footsteps ceased. They ventured out, finding no trace of the intruder. The Reaper was elusive, a shadow in the dark. They decided to split up to cover more ground. Claire and Dean headed to the old sheriff's office, while Eli and Nora remained to dig deeper. Claire and Dean found the sheriff's office eerily intact, with dusty files and a cell that seemed to have held something monstrous. In the files, they uncovered a photo of the Reaper's only known survivor, a woman with a haunting gaze that seemed to follow them wherever they went. Eli and Nora found a hidden compartment in the sawmill with a collection of old, worn masks. It was a grim trophy room, suggesting the Reaper's penchant for disguise. Reuniting, they shared their findings, the pieces of the puzzle slowly coming together. The Reaper was more than just a killer. He was a master of deception. That night, as they camped, stories of past victims filled the air. The firelight danced across their faces, casting shadows that seemed to mimic the killer's unseen presence. A scream pierced the silence. Nora was missing. They found her camera, the last footage showing a fleeting figure in a tattered cloak. The group split again, desperation driving them. Dean found an old diary, the author claiming to be the Reaper, detailing a life of pain and a desire for retribution. Claire stumbled upon a decrepit house, where an elderly woman claimed the Reaper was her brother, cursed after a tragic love affair turned deadly. Eli, searching the woods, heard whispers and followed them to a clearing where the masks from the sawmill hung from trees, swaying as if in a macabre breeze. Back at the camp they gathered, fear palpable. The Reaper's story was more complex than they thought, a blend of heartbreak and madness. They devised a plan to lure the Reaper using the masks and the diary. As they set their trap, the moon bathed the town in an otherworldly glow. The night was tense, every sound amplified. Then he appeared, a figure in a mask moving with a silent grace that belied his lethal intent. In a heart-stopping moment, the Reaper lunged, but their trap worked. The ground gave way, and the Reaper fell into a concealed pit. They watched as the figure struggled, then stilled. The dawn broke, and with it, the spell of the night. The Reaper was no more, or so it seemed. The crew left Brookdale, the documentary complete, yet the final scene showed the pit empty, the Reaper's mask gone, suggesting a continuation of the legend. Years later, each member of the crew experienced cold touches and whispers in the dark, a reminder that some stories never truly end. The Reaper's spirit lingered on,